Hey everybody, I just wanted to go over something real quick that we've run into in this super competitive sellers market that we've got going on. It seems that buyers are almost infinitely willing to kind of succumb and put whatever their strongest foot forward is. And one of those negotiating tactics is making the earnest money hard. And that's definitely a strong tactic, and it has its value. And us as real estate agents, we need to work to protect them, protect that earnest money of theirs throughout the contract, because they don't know what all things can go on in the contract. They just may be thinking about getting this contract now. So um, first off, I want to define two different types of non-refundable earnest money. There's earnest money non-refundable. That just means that it eliminates some of the contingencies and things like that throughout the contract. But the earnest money, the actual money, stays with the escrow company until close of escrow. So that close of escrow, that has to happen. We still have that earnest money in a third party before anything happens. It still is money that is the buyer's credit towards what they're doing. They're not forfeiting that money altogether. It's still part of what they've already given, and the escrow company holds on to it. The second type is earnest money non-refundable immediately released. That means that mid-contract, or whenever that term comes to, they cut that check to the seller, and the seller has the money. The escrow company no longer has the money. So as you can imagine, in the immediately released is a stronger negotiating position, but it is also a much more risky negotiating position in the fact that you will never see that earnest money again, right? It will show as a credit in the closing statement at a successful close, but if there's anything that goes on, that earnest money is in the seller's pocket, and they would have to pry it out of there, with tongs. So there's no getting that money back. So here's some ways we can protect our earnest money in different stages. So earnest money non-refundable just means it's being held by the escrow company. But if you want to remember the contract and the contingencies in which your buyer could get that earnest money back, there are three main ones. There are the inspection contingency, the lending contingency, and the appraisal contingency. So those are the three I'm going to attack right now. So if you want to make it non-refundable but retain the inspection, it's important not to just say non-refundable at conclusion of inspection period. Well, guess what? The inspection period defined by the contract is your 10 days. But if we think about that, the BINSR process by the contract could be 20 days because you have the back and forth and back and forth. So what I would change that verbiage to be is successful completion of the BINSR process subject to section 6J of the contract. 6J is the section of the contract that talks about the back and forth, that the buyer gives the seller options, the seller can rebut, and then the buyer can accept or decline. So successful completion of the BINSR process subject to section 6J of the contract. So that would cover that. The next is lending conditions. So lending conditions has to come up with, they have to be approved and able to get funds without prior to document conditions by 3 days prior to close of escrow. So that is section 2B. So if you want to retain the lending contingency in there, then you need to retain section 2B of the contract. So that's the part that would stop. Somebody puts $5,000 non-refundable in there, and a week before the end of the contract, they lose their job. If you don't retain that lending contingency, then not only did they just lose their job, they just lost $5,000. So let's see if we can maintain that. The last one is the appraisal contingency, and that's section 2L. And that just says the house has to appraise. Now, that's the one that we've talked about a lot as far as manipulating that appraisal. So it may be, that the appraisal contingency is still there, subject to section 2L, or the house must appraise, or the buyer is willing to pay $5,000 over appraisal. So you're giving yourself a window. If it appraises 20 grand under, you still have an out, and you can still protect your buyer's earnest money. That's important. So those three there. If the earnest money goes non-refundable and stays with the escrow company, right? Just non-refundable but stays with it, right? Then you can be a little bit more lenient on these things because we can have some flex in there, and that's subject for longer conversation. However, the earnest money is to be released. You really need to think about these three contingencies what they would be and what kind of uh, what kind of awful things could happen if that money is released to the seller. One of these things pops in and you can't get that money back. So please consider that when writing your offers. And I know you want to go with the strongest foot for your buyer and the strongest possible offer. And I think it's a rookie mistake to go risk your client's earnest money for something like this. So you've got to go in with a little bit more knowledge and a little bit more capacity to protect your client. Because remember, you're building these clients for life, not for a transaction. So you want them on your side for the next 10, 20, 50 years. So anyways, that was about it. I wanted to go into that. Thanks again, and we'll chat later.